Hit that subscribe button to support our channel. Your encouragement inspires us to keep creating daily stories. The Galactic Combat Academy rose like a crystalline cathedral against the backdrop of 3 burning suns. Its towering spires catching the light and fracturing it into rainbow cascades across the void. Within its grand lecture hall, the most elite cadets of known space had gathered in sectoid Brutari, with chitinous armor that gleamed like obsidian. Crystalline Vorthak, whose bodies sang with harmonic frequencies. Telepathic Zephyrians, whose pale forms seemed to shimmer between dimensions. And reptilian Saurians, whose scales rippled with evolutionary perfection. They filled the tiered seats with an arrogance born of millennia of galactic dominance, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and mental projections that spoke of superiority over lesser species. At the front of the hall, Instructor Vextel stood 6-armed and imposing, his mandibles clicking with anticipation, as he activated the massive holographic projector. "Today we test your instincts." His voice boomed through translators, each word carrying the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds. "You will recognize predators by sound alone, the voices of death that have shaped civilizations and ended empires. This is predator recognition training, designed to humble even you, the elite." His compound eyes swept across the assembled cadets, noting their confident postures and smug expressions. In the far corner, almost lost among the towering alien forms, sat Marcus Chen, 5'8", of unremarkable human flesh, lean and unimposing, drawing barely concealed sneers from his classmates, who wondered why such an insignificant creature had been permitted among their ranks. The hall darkened, and the first audio recording began to play. A deep, rumbling growl echoed through the chamber like thunder rolling across an endless plain, each vibration calculated to trigger primal fear responses in evolved beings. The alien cadets stiffened as one, their various forms of sensory organs analyzing the sound with evolutionary precision. Whispers rippled through the crowd in a dozen languages. "That is the hunting cry of the Vrex bloodhound, apex predator of 3 entire star systems." The instructor nodded with satisfaction, watching pride beam across alien faces as they congratulated themselves on their knowledge and genetic superiority. The second recording shattered the momentary calm, bone-rattling screech layered with infrasound that made the crystalline walls themselves vibrate in resonance. Several cadets flinched openly, their evolutionary instincts screaming warnings of imminent death. A Brutari cadet slammed its razor-sharp claws against its desk, leaving deep gouges in the metal as it declared with trembling authority, "That is the Growler Stalker of the Outer Rim. No sentient being survives once it chooses them as prey." Applause erupted from the assembled students, their laughter carrying notes of arrogance as they showed off their species' accumulated knowledge of galactic threats, each sound representing thousands of years of careful cataloging and fearful respect for the universe's most dangerous predators. Then came the third audio file, and the atmosphere in the hall shifted like a tectonic plate finding a new position. The sound began as a low, guttural rumbling that seemed to emerge from the bowels of some primordial hell, building slowly in intensity and pitch until it exploded into a piercing scream that rattled bones and sent vibrations through the very souls of those who heard it. The alien cadets recoiled as if struck by physical blows, their evolutionary programming flooding their systems with terror hormones. A Zephyrian began to shiver uncontrollably, its telepathic field projecting waves of pure dread as it muttered, That cannot be natural. No world could produce such a sound and still harbor life." Silence gripped the lecture hall like a predator's jaws. Even Instructor Vextel, hesitating as his 6 arms trembled slightly. When he finally spoke, his voice carried an undertone of genuine fear that no amount of training could completely suppress. "This recording represents what our xenobiologists consider one of the deadliest apex predators in the known galaxy. Its hunting call has been documented in the final transmissions of 17 different colonial expeditions. The sound itself has ended civilizations, driven entire species to abandon their homeworlds, rather than face what produces it. Can anyone identify this creature?" The alien cadets fumbled with their responses, their usual confidence evaporating as they offered hesitant guesses, none certain, all colored with the kind of existential dread that only comes from confronting something beyond their understanding. Into this tense silence came an unexpected sound laughter, at first quiet, barely audible above the ambient hum of the Academy's systems, then growing louder and more distinct, cutting through the fear like a blade through silk. Every head turned toward the source, compound eyes and sensory organs, focusing with laser precision on the small human in the corner. Marcus Chen was laughing not, the nervous laughter of fear, or the bitter laughter of despair, but genuine, warm amusement that seemed utterly inappropriate given the circumstances. He wiped tears from his eyes, grinning with an expression that suggested he'd just heard the setup to a particularly good joke. "That," Marcus said, his voice carrying easily through the stunned silence, each word dropping like stones into still water. "That's not some alien super predator. That's just a cougar. Mountain lion. We have those back home on Earth. Hell, I've heard them outside my uncle's farm in Colorado. Used to scare the cattle something fierce. But they're really not that dangerous if you know what you're doing." He shrugged with casual indifference, as if discussing the weather, rather than what the galaxy's finest xenobiologists had classified as an apex predator capable of ending civilizations. The room froze in a tableau of disbelief. Every alien stare fixed on the unremarkable human, who had just casually dismissed their greatest fear. Instructor Vextel's mandibles twitched uncontrollably, his compound eyes reflecting fragments of confusion and growing horror. You claim this sound originates from your homeworld, from Earth." His voice cracked slightly, betraying emotions that a lifetime of military training hadn't prepared him to handle. Marcus leaned back in his chair, completely at ease, despite being the focus of hundreds of alien gazes that ranged from incredulous to terrified. "Yeah, pretty common, actually. Big cat, lives in forests and mountains throughout North and South America. Dangerous if you're careless, or if you corner one protecting its cubs, but nothing most people worry about on a daily basis. We jog on trails through their territories, go camping in their hunting grounds. They usually avoid humans, unless they're starving or sick." The hall erupted in chaos as murmurs exploded across the tiered seating, alien voices rising in panic and disbelief. A Brutari cadet stood abruptly, its exoskeleton gleaming as it shouted with desperate authority. "Impossible. Absolutely impossible. No civilized species could survive alongside predators of that caliber. Your translators must be malfunctioning." Other voices joined the chorus of denial, each species offering their own expertise on why what they'd just heard couldn't possibly be true, their words carrying the desperate edge of beings whose fundamental understanding of the universe was being challenged. Marcus remained calm in the center of the storm, his human composure a stark contrast to the alien panic surrounding him. "We don't just survive," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos with quiet authority. "We thrive. My cousin Sarah runs ultramarathons through Cougar country in Utah. My grandfather used to trap them for the state when they got too close to livestock. They're respect-worthy predators, sure, but they're just part of the ecosystem. Nothing more, nothing less." He paused, watching the growing horror on alien faces, before adding with a slight smirk, "And that was actually a pretty small cougar, judging by the sound. You should hear what a brown bear sounds like when it's really pissed off." The instructor's voice emerged as barely more than a whisper. Technological amplification the only reason it reached the back rows. "You mean to tell us that your supposedly peaceful, garden world of Earth naturally produces predators with the same hunting resonance as our documented galactic apex species?" His 6 arms were shaking now, and his compound eyes reflected the shattering of every assumption he'd held about human capabilities and origins. Marcus pulled out his personal datapad, fingers moving with practiced ease as he accessed his personal files. The holographic display flickered to life above his seat, showing grainy footage recorded by human hikers and wildlife enthusiasts, authentic, undeniable evidence of cougars shrieking in the darkness of Earth's wilderness. Their calls identical to the civilization-ending sound that had just terrified an entire lecture hall of the galaxy's finest military cadets. "Here's some footage my buddy Jake took last summer while we were backpacking in Yellowstone. That's a female calling for her cubs. Pretty normal stuff, really." The weight of revelation crashed down on the assembled aliens like a physical force. Earth wasn't just another garden world that had somehow produced a spacefaring species through unlikely evolution. Earth was a deathworld, a planet so hostile and dangerous that it had forged its inhabitants in the fires of constant predation, creating beings who considered apex predators to be minor inconveniences, rather than existential threats. The silence that followed this realization was profound and terrifying, filled with the sound of entire worldviews crumbling and the birth of a new and fearsome respect for the small, unassuming species they had dismissed as fragile and harmless. In the academy courtyard after class, aliens swarmed around Marcus like metal filings drawn to a magnet, their voices urgent with desperate need to understand. "What else hunts on your world? How does your species survive? What evolutionary advantages do you possess that we lack?" The questions came in waves, each one revealing deeper layers of fear and fascination, as the reality of humanity's origins began to sink in among beings who had never faced true predation in their evolutionary history. Marcus found himself in the strange position of being a tour guide through humanity's casual relationship with death, listing off Earth's predators with the same tone he might use to describe items on a grocery list. Well, there are wolves pack hunters that coordinate attacks, sharks in the oceans, some as long as school buses with teeth like razors, brown bears and polar bears that can weigh over 1,000 pounds and run faster than most vehicles, saltwater crocodiles that haven't changed much in millions of years because they're already perfect killing machines, venomous snakes, poisonous spiders, even insects like hornets that can kill with their stings. Each word landed like a physical blow among his audience, alien faces growing paler with every addition to the list of terrors that humans considered part of their normal environment. A crystalline Vorthak, its harmonic frequency wavering with distress, managed to stammer out, "Your kind lives among monsters. How do any of you survive to reproduce? How does your civilization function when surrounded by such threats?" The question carried undertones of genuine bewilderment, as if the concept of coexisting with predators was so foreign that it challenged the speaker's basic understanding of how life could organize itself into complex societies. Marcus grinned, that same casual expression that had started this entire revelation. "We call it camping. Some people pay money to spend weekends in places where all those predators live. We consider it relaxing." The statement hung in the air like a challenge to the natural order of the universe, suggesting that humans didn't just survive among Earth's predators, they sought them out for recreation, turning the ultimate test of survival into a leisure activity that parents taught their children as a normal part of growing up. Word spread through the academy's corridors like wildfire, alien cadets whispering in dozens of languages, the human laughs at apex predators. High-ranking nobles who had initially sneered at humanity's inclusion in the academy now found their mockery tempered by a growing, nagging fear. If humans could endure such monsters as a matter of course, what might they become when faced with the organized violence of galactic warfare? What capabilities might they possess that hadn't yet been revealed? The questions multiplied like viruses, infecting every conversation and challenging every assumption about Earth's newest addition to the galactic community. One evening, as three suns set behind the Academy's crystalline spires, a group of noble-born alien cadets cornered Marcus in a secluded corridor. Their various forms of intimidation display activated as they demanded answers to the question that had been haunting them since the Predator recognition class. "Tell us, human," their spokesman hissed through a translator that struggled with the mixture of languages and emotional overtones. "What predator rules your world? What creature do you fear most? There must be something that even your death-forged species acknowledges as superior." Marcus paused for a long moment, his expression growing thoughtful and somehow more serious than his alien questioners had yet seen. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that seemed to press down on the corridor like atmospheric pressure before a storm. "The only real predator on Earth," he said quietly, each word carefully chosen and precisely delivered, "is us, humans. We're the apex predator of our world, and we have been for thousands of years." The alien nobles recoiled as if struck, their various forms of sensory organs reeling from implications they were only beginning to process. You hunt your own predators. Your species preys upon the creatures that we classify as galactic-level threats." The question came out as barely more than a whisper, technological amplification the only reason it was audible at all. Marcus nodded, his expression carrying the casual certainty of someone stating an obvious fact. "For sport, for food, sometimes just to protect our families and communities. We've faced everything our world could throw at us since ages. Volcanic eruptions, plague, famine, predators that made your apex species look like house pets, and we didn't just survive, we won. We turned every challenge into an opportunity, every threat into a resource, every predator into either a partner or prey, depending on what served our purposes better." The nobles stood frozen in a mixture of horror and fascination as Marcus continued, his words painting a picture of humanity that challenged every assumption they'd held about Earth's newest member species. "We domesticated wolves into dogs, turned them into hunting partners and companions. We hunted mammoths to extinction, with nothing but stone-tipped spears and coordinated tactics. We explored every environment on our planet, from polar ice caps to tropical rainforests to ocean depths, adapting and conquering. until there wasn't a single ecosystem that didn't bear the mark of human presence. And we did it all while competing with predators that your galactic classification system considers civilization-ending threats. That night, as Marcus lay in his dorm room looking at a photograph from Earth's snapshot of Colorado wilderness where a cougar was captured, mid-leap through dappled forest sunlight, he smiled with quiet satisfaction. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, new opportunities to show his fellow cadets exactly what sort of species they'd invited into their exclusive academy. They thought they'd seen the extent of human capabilities, but they hadn't even begun to understand what 10,000 years of apex predation had forged in the fires of constant competition. They didn't know about lions, or tigers, or the great white sharks that humans swam with for recreation. They had no concept of persistence hunting, or tool use, or the kind of strategic thinking that had allowed a species of hairless primates to dominate a world full of creatures bigger, stronger, and more naturally armed than themselves. Outside his window, the Academy's lights twinkled against the darkness of space. And somewhere in those lights, alien cadets were lying awake, wondering what other secrets humanity might be hiding. What other casual revelations might shatter their understanding of the universe and their place in it. Marcus closed his eyes and smiled. Tomorrow's classes were going to be very interesting indeed. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel and support us so we can post new videos every day. Your support means the world.